Have you ever woken up and immediately felt something was off? Like the world shifted while you were asleep, and when you open your eyes, you're left trying to piece together what happened while you were out of control? That night, while I was sleeping, everything changed. I never thought I'd wake up to the nightmare that awaited me, but the truth came crashing down the moment my son's friends crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I was asleep, and they were awake, but when I finally opened my eyes, it felt like the world had turned upside down. What happens when the line between trust and betrayal becomes blurred? Everything had seemed normal that evening. My son Jordan had his friends over like he always did on weekends. I'd made sure dinner was ready, the house was clean, and I gave them the space they needed to hang out. I'd always been the cool mom. I'd been the one to let the boys play video games in the living room, the one who didn't mind loud music or jokes that made me raise an eyebrow. After all, they were good kids, at least that's what I believed. But this time was different. I didn't know what was happening in the other room while I was preparing to head to bed, exhausted from the day's work. What I didn't realize was that a single moment would shatter the boundaries I had worked so hard to set as a parent. When you trust someone, especially your child's friends, how do you ever come back from the moment when that trust is shattered? It was late. I was exhausted from the long day, and the house was quiet. My son and his friends were still in the living room, but the noise had quieted down. I thought maybe they had fallen asleep or were winding down. I had no idea that in the dead of night something was about to unfold in my own home that would change everything. I heard footsteps, soft at first, then a little louder, like someone was standing just outside my bedroom door. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. It was too quiet. I barely had time to register the sound when the door creaked open. My first thought was that Jordan had come to check on me, maybe bring me a glass of water after a long day. But then I saw the shadow of someone, one of his friends, standing there in the doorway. I didn't say anything at first. My mind was spinning. What was he doing? Why was he standing there just staring at me? And then I saw it. His face, nervous but strangely determined. "Jordan's mom, I need to talk to you," he stammered. But the words didn't come. It was like everything in that moment, in that room, shifted into something I couldn't understand. What do you do when your child's friend, someone you've welcomed into your home, crosses a line you never expected? He stood there, his hands clenched at his sides as I tried to make sense of his presence. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel safe. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But my heart was pounding now, faster than ever before. I didn't mean to. "But something happened," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean something happened?" I asked, feeling the panic start to rise in my chest. "You need to leave." He hesitated, and then the words spilled out in a rush. "I didn't want this. It wasn't supposed to happen, but I think I crossed a line and I need to tell you." My mind raced. What could he be talking about? What line had been crossed? I sat up, pushing myself up on my elbows, waiting for him to explain. He couldn't meet my eyes. The silence was suffocating. "Your son's friends, they've been talking about you. It's something I don't think you know. It was never supposed to go this far." But his voice trailed off, and I could hear the guilt and shame in his tone. What do you do when your child's friends reveal something you can't ignore? When they cross a line that no one should ever cross? In that moment, I felt the floor beneath me crumble. Every instinct told me to protect myself, to push him away. But somehow I couldn't move. I couldn't say anything. I felt frozen, like everything I thought I knew about these kids, the ones who I thought were like family, was slipping away. He finally spoke again, his voice shaky but desperate. "Jordan's friends, they've been saying things about you, things I don't think you should hear, and I don't think I can keep it to myself anymore." I didn't understand. "What do you mean, saying things about me?" He glanced at the door as though checking to make sure no one else was listening. His voice dropped lower. "Some of the guys, they think you're attractive, and they've been talking about it behind your back." My stomach turned. Was this some kind of joke? Was he messing with me? But his expression was serious. And that's when it hit me. They had been talking about me in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. What happens when you find out that people you trusted not only cross the line but blur it entirely? I didn't know what to do with this information. The shock was overwhelming. How could my son's friends, kids who had come over for dinners, who had laughed in my living room, think these things about me? The betrayal wasn't just what had been said behind my back. It was that these boys, who I thought of as innocent, had crossed a line without even realizing the consequences of their actions. I forced myself to stand, to face him. "You have to leave," I said, my voice shaking. Now, he didn't argue. He didn't try to explain himself any further. He just nodded and left, his footsteps echoing as he walked out of the room. But the damage was done. I was awake now. My world was upside down. What happens after the truth is exposed? How do you pick up the pieces of a shattered trust? The morning after was like stepping into a different reality. Jordan was downstairs, oblivious to what had happened. He greeted me with his usual smile, but I couldn't look at him the same way. The memories of what had been said, the conversation I'd had with his friend, those thoughts echoed in my mind. Could I ever look at his friends the same way? Could I ever trust them again? I thought about confronting Jordan, about telling him what his friends had said, but something held me back. I didn't know how to explain it to him. How could I explain something so unnatural? I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do next. Was this the beginning of the end of their friendship? Was I supposed to shut it down completely? Or was this something that would fade with time, like a mistake that could be swept under the rug? When the truth comes out, you're left with two choices: confront the situation head-on or bury it deep and hope it never resurfaces. What would you do? Days passed, and I couldn't keep the weight of this secret anymore. I had to confront Jordan. One evening after dinner, when everyone was home, I called him into my room. He knew something was wrong by the look on my face. "What's going on, Mom?" he asked. I hesitated. "How do you even begin to talk about something like this?" "You need to know something about your friends," I started, my voice firm but shaky. "I heard things that I can't ignore anymore." Jordan's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "Your friends have crossed a line, and I need you to understand how serious it is," I said, my voice trembling as I tried to explain. "What happens when your child's world unravels in front of them? When the friendships they once trusted become the very thing that tests their beliefs?" And now, as I reflect on everything that happened, I realize that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. How do you move forward when trust is shattered? How do you rebuild what's been broken? In the end, I realized that it wasn't just about the friends. It was about me, about my choices, and about how I would protect myself and my son from anything that threatened the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish.